Hey everyone. So the Baroque period provided a multitude of art and music, so much you already may be familiar with. I was with some of it, so I chose the Four Seasons for my project, which is a musical piece composed by Antonio Vivaldi. And it was composed in 1723 when Vivaldi was 45. And it is his most popular piece, and it incurred most of its notoriety posthumously, so after he died. And many people have heard at least part of this piece, even if they don't know that that it comes from the Four Seasons. So here is a sample of the work from the winter section that is one of the more popular. So that was part of the winter section of the Four Seasons, and you may know it or you may recognize one of the other parts. But this entire piece was inspired by the Mantua countryside when Vivaldi was living there as the maestro di cappella for the governor. And that basically is just like a private conductor for the royal orchestra there. And it is a violin concerto broken down into the four movements: spring, autumn, winter, and summer. Autumn, winter, and summer are wholly original for the piece. Spring was composed by Vivaldi, but he actually borrowed part of it from another work of his called Giustino that was composed in 1724. And each of the movements is roughly 10 minutes, and each of the movements themselves are broken down into three parts. Now, what people love about this piece of music, what made it so great, was that um, each of the movements, the seasons, have their own personality. And Vivaldi encapsulates the different parts of each season, from birds singing in the spring, the blazing heat from the sun in the summer, the cool air moving in autumn, and the roar of a fire in winter in each of these parts. And it revolutionized music in such a way that even Bach was inspired by it, and he sampled part of spring for one of his arias. So Vivaldi really stepped it up for a lot of the composers during this time, especially with the Baroque period being, then the Renaissance, and, that emotion and, the tempo changes and everything, using bigger orchestras, that type of thing. Um, and speaking of the tempo changes, they also help bring this piece to life in all the movements, but especially in winter. It's actually my favorite because in that part you heard, it just reminds me of like a blizzard and snowflakes flurrying, and cold wind just blowing snow everywhere, and it just being this big event, this great natural. And in addition to the musical representations of nature, it's actually unclear if Vivaldi wrote these sonnets himself. However, the evidence strongly suggests to the fact that he did, since the writing styles were similar to those of Vivaldi, and each of the sonnets are broken down into three parts, and so is the Four Seasons perfectly. And the words follow just the music itself perfectly. So people do think that Vivaldi also wrote those to accompany his music. So that was basically the Four Seasons in a nutshell. To the whole thing yourself, it's very interesting. It's beautiful, and I've loved it ever since I was a kid. So if you have time, I would recommend listening to the whole thing. But I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for your time.